There was a hand inside the wall, and it had been there before I arrived. But what stopped my blood cold wasn't the hand. It was the name carved into the concrete beside it. Welcome to Untold Lores. What was inside the wall? Part 1 of 4. Block 13 had been empty for 4 years. Everyone in the industry knew that. Nobody asked why. I was hired on a Tuesday, briefed in under 10 minutes, handed a key card, and told to start immediately. My supervisor, a heavyset Malay man named Razif, said the job was straightforward: assess all 13 floors, document structural damage, begin prep work on the top unit, Unit 1313. He did not look at me when he said the unit number. He looked at his clipboard. I noticed that. I told myself I was overthinking it. The lift was out of service. I climbed all 13 floors with a torch, a toolbox, and a water bottle. The stairwell smelled like old concrete and something faintly sweet underneath it that I could not name. I thought it was mold. I told myself it was mold. Unit 1313 was locked when I arrived. Then I tried the key card and the door swung open before the card finished reading. Like it had been waiting for me to touch the handle. I stepped inside. The unit was gutted. No furniture, no fittings, bare concrete on every surface. I set down my toolbox and began the inspection. Standard work: tap the walls, listen for hollow sections, mark damaged load-bearing points. Nothing unusual. I was making notes in my work log when I tapped the wall beside the bathroom door frame. It tapped back. One knock exactly as hard as mine, exactly the same rhythm. I stopped. My hand was still raised. My knuckles were still touching the wall. The cold from the concrete traveled up through my fingers and into my wrist. I told myself it was an echo. Old buildings. Oh, Block 13 was old. I knocked again, twice, deliberately. Slow knocks back. Slow, deliberate. The skin on my forearms pulled tight. My jaw locked. I pressed my ear against the wall. There was no sound on the other side. No pipes, no movement. Just silence that felt like something pressing back. I opened my toolbox and took out a hammer and a chisel. The wall was scheduled for partial demolition anyway. I started at the corner of the tap point and worked the chisel into the plaster. It came away in chunks, white dust dropping, the concrete underneath dark with age. I worked for 4 minutes. Maybe 5. The hole was about the size of a dinner plate when I first saw them. Fingers, not bones, not a glove. Fingers, gray and very still, pressed flat against the interior of the cavity, arranged neatly side by side as though the hand was laid there on purpose. I dropped the chisel. The sound of it hitting the floor was very loud and then very gone. I could not move backward. My legs had simply stopped. I made myself widen the hole. I do not know why. I think some part of me needed to see the whole hand. I needed it to be connected to an arm, to a wall cavity accident, to something that made the kind of sense a person can walk away from. The hand was not connected to anything. It ended at the wrist. The cut was clean. The skin at the edge of the wrist was folded inward, tucked neatly, like the hem of a shirt. I took photographs. My hands were shaking enough that 3 of the photos were blurred. I called Razif. He answered on the first ring. I told him what I had found. There was a pause. Not a surprised pause. A careful pause, the kind a person makes when they are deciding how much to say. He told me to seal the cavity and file it as a structural anomaly. To not put the specific details in the written report. To call him directly with anything else I found. Anything else. He said it like he expected there would be more. I stood in Unit 1313 for a long time after I hung up. The afternoon light had shifted. The room was darker. I looked at the hole in the wall. The fingers were gone. I had not touched them. I had not reached into the cavity. I had been standing 6 feet away with a phone against my ear. They were simply gone. There was something left in the cavity where the hand had been. I leaned in close and turned my torch on it. Scratched into the concrete at the back of the cavity, at a depth no living person could have reached from the outside. My full name, first name, last name, scratched recently, because the concrete dust from the fresh letters was still sitting in a thin line at the base of each groove. My name had been inside that wall before I opened it. That was when I understood I was not alone in Unit 1313. I woke up on the 13th floor. I had no memory of going there. And something in the dark at the end of the corridor was already looking at me. That's it for part 1. Follow Untold Lores for part 2. Like and subscribe for daily stories.